Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Judith Royer. I am one of the Sisters of St. Joseph, the CSJs at LMU, and I am the director of the CSJ Center for Reconciliation and Justice on the LMU campus. On behalf of the Sisters of St. Joseph and the CSJ Center, I want to welcome all of you, family, friends, colleagues of the people we are celebrating today, and a special welcome to those of you who have joined us as part of this year's Family Weekend. The Hidden Heroes program is designed to honor members of the LMU and law school faculty, staff, student community, alums and/or community partners who have been committed to social justice, service, and action. These are people who have gone largely unrecognized, or what we sometimes call under the radar. So this is a good time to tell some small part of the stories of this year's honorees. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our dedicated Hidden Heroes Selection Committee and the university members who nominated this year's awardees. I will now introduce Doris Baisley, presentation editor for today's program, to talk about the unique nature of this recognition program.
Thank you, Judith. Judith and I come from the theater department, so to celebrate our hidden heroes, we dramatize them. We match them up in conversation with writers and actors who will make their stories into monologues that tell us a little more about them, about where they came from and how they got to where they are now. These will be read by a group of actors, and we found that as the story moves from the original teller through the writer, through the actor, and out to the audience, it creates a circle of communication that brings the individual story to life in a collective context with new meaning and new perspective. The piece will take about an hour and 30 minutes, and afterwards we'll present the award and invite everyone to stay as the awardees, actors, and writers get together for an on-screen discussion and a celebration. Now here is our Fall 2024 Hidden Heroes presentation.
To a wounded world in need of healing and compassion.
In the midst of our vulnerability and emptiness.
In a time of limited and unevenly shared global resources.
We ask for the grace to stand with the poor, the suffering, the oppressed.
To promote social justice.
To promote economic justice.
To be a community of unity and reconciliation.
When it came time to give me a first assignment, the provincial superior said, "Absolutely great. I need a new chaplain at Loyola Marymount University." And that's what got me into campus ministry. I had thought I was going to be a high school counselor. Don Merrifield was president, and he took me on for qualified approval. Like, I didn't have a secure job. He was very cautious about me. I had a reputation. San Diego Magazine had an article about the shoeless priest. So now, let's go back to what it was like in the late 60s, early 70s. We have Vietnam going. I got accepted at San Francisco State after I got ordained to get a degree in counseling. I had been accepted into the program, and then this is the value of obedience coming. The provincial said, "Oh, you need to go to Phoenix and teach for a year in high school." It's like, wow, that was tough. because I had done everything I could to make this thing happen. It was one of those eye-opening experiences. It was like, this is costing, this whole obedience thing. Ignatius was really big on obedience. So obedience is our mark. And as soon as you hear obedience, you think about somebody, irrationally commanding you to go ahead and do something just to suit them. And it's not connected with any kind of relationship with God. But it's meant to be a discernment, part of a dialogue. So the obedience thing, ultimately, for me, is a trust in God that I can't see how it's all going to work out for the best, but I've got enough examples in my life to know that it does. Then, after the year in Phoenix, I was released to go to school. A friend of mine had gone to San Diego State to get a degree in something, and he's like, Randy, there's this fabulous new program in counseling in the School of Education. This guy is terrific. So I contacted him, and he said, you've got accepted by San Francisco State. You already have a master's in theology and a minor in philosophy, so you're in. So I went there, and it was a good program. And it really tested me because one of the faculty said, don't let your values get in the way of your counseling. Meaning me, a priest. But I thought immediately, well, you are I used interior language to describe this, impertinence, because really, I would bring my values, of course, which was that people become free as they learn themselves. Well, it was good for me to have resistance. I needed to go to a Catholic institution for a practicum because I told the director I wanted to put this into practice in a Catholic setting. He says, you have to go somewhere else. So I went to University of San Diego as a volunteer. When I was studying, I stayed with Christ the King parish. And this is a parish that had protesters of the Vietnam War, and they sought sanctuary at the church. I mean, all this stuff was going on, and I'm just trying to go to school. But also I lived there, and the liturgies were fabulous. Christ the King had declared itself sanctuary. So there were some Navy people, because the base was right down there, who were supposed to be shipped out to Vietnam, but actually claimed sanctuary in the church. So there are protests, and the people were pretty much for it, the concept of sanctuary. Those are the times. So the barefoot priest thing fits into this kind of context. The parish was small, and they were very tight. Christ the King was started for the African Americans. That's a segregated church historically. But the parish and the neighborhood had changed. And even though the original parishioners had moved away, they formed a bond with it, and they kept coming back. And somehow the spirit of the people became so effectively strong, and other people were attracted to it, white people, and then the Latino people moved into the neighborhood. And so it was a very exciting, mixed kind of place. It was jammed. Wow, a great spirit. Wow. So that's the kind of people, folksy people, and they don't stand on formality, right? These were Black Catholics who had originated in New Orleans. And I began to learn about that kind of experience because there was something a little different than just the Black friends I knew from San Francisco or Los Angeles. It was just kind of partly a cultural thing. They were used to it, and it went back a long ways for them. These weren't converts from being Baptist or anything like that. They had been Catholics and very friendly, warm people. And once they saw that you were with them, you're right into the family. Lots of hugs. Vatican II was pretty close, and also General Congregation 32. This is faith in the service of the poor. Let's do it. So when they wanted a mass at the beach, then I went barefoot. The beach was a few miles away. The pastor would have thought nothing of it. I thought nothing of it, even at the time. But somebody got wind of it, and it winds up in this magazine. And that's when some people were like, oh, what are you doing? They would have been kind of for it, but again, it's making a little bit of a story. Isn't this weird or different? Well, yes. And then this other thing, while I was doing my internship counseling at USD, I found out that I loved working with university-age students because they did not want me to be dad like the high school boys did when I was teaching there. They wanted somebody to hear them out and help them figure it out. I could do it. So that was really key. The students said, nobody says Mass for us. I will. Nobody gives us retreats. I will. Even though there was a seminary on the campus and the bishops and the bishop had his residence on the campus. It was pretty small. It was in the living room of the Sisters of the Religious of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Probably would have been 20 students. And they said, oh, Father Randy, come on, we'll just do it here. I assumed, they were in good terms with the sisters. Some of them were probably doing classes with them. So fine, we did. They were these weekday masses. Rules were not too strict on whether or not you could say Mass outside of a chapel. It's just that the expectation was that you would have on the regular vestments that priests wear. The white gown and the colored vestments of the day. You could say Mass in any place within reason, like the expectation is if you had vestments, but I didn't wear any vestments, any suitable church ones. So probably that wasn't prudent. I had shoes on, as I recall. They were so glad to just have this kind of religious experience. So the intimacy of a kind of living room liturgy was perfect, where they would do the readings. We were very close, and that Eucharist would be right there. It was pretty positive for them. Like they were just being college students, but they loved that liturgy, the intimacy. And they did the music and the praying the way that appealed to them. It was not formalistic and doctrinal, but the preaching was solid. I had vestments available to me. I just didn't think of it. I didn't have the rule in mind. Well, here's how you live and learn. Then the bishop finds out about it and sends a note. Not to me, but to my provincial superior. I was a Jesuit, so right at the top. That's definitely a no-no. So I'm suspended from priesthood. I was censured, forbidden to say a public Mass. The sister who was the superior had found out about it, and she didn't know me personally, had never talked to me, so she simply reported it. Later on, she actually became a superior of a retirement community for the sisters in Menlo Park. And my mother was very closely associated with them and a close friend of the sister. And so later in life, I wound up giving spiritual exercises at that convent. Wow. That sister and I had a big laugh about it. I was immature, just finding out as a young priest, don't do this anymore. Even though it's okay, but don't. It just bothers the hierarchy. It was my superior, and I put him on the spot, so I felt badly about that. There are consequences to my doing things spontaneously. And so I contacted this moral theologian who had taught me, so what do I do? And he said, you write a letter of apology. So I said, I'm sorry. I realized that I really upset things. I'll never do that again. I was restored. And the students' immediate response when they found out I got censored, they said, oh, we'll make vestments. And these vestments look like nothing you'll ever see in a church again. They got some colored material and made these kind of chasubles, like they had the open neck and all that kind of stuff. But the color pattern was not exactly, Roman vestments with the gold embroidery. They weren't trying to make any kind of statement so much as, here, we did this for you. And here's our beautiful vestment. And so I wore the white gown, and on top, I wore the vestments for the rest of my time there. But that's the kind of stuff that still goes on in the church that I didn't feel good about then, and I don't now. It's people caring about the wrong things, or putting an emphasis on things that are, well, yeah, that's like, I can see what's right. But some of it seems really, yeah. And there were other things. I was in trouble with 3 bishops in 3 dioceses, all at the same time within 1 year. The province understood these things. One time, I was asked to give a retreat to high school girls at a retreat house in Santa Cruz on the beach, and they asked to have confession. Now, the official churchy thing is to hear confession in those boxes. But the retreat center did not have them. So it seemed to me the thing to do, even before any of the church sex abuse was open. I said, I'm not going to hear confessions in an unseen space. I'm going to walk outside on the beach, and the students will walk with me, and we'll have reconciliation. Well, the girls thought that was super. And their folks said, go, and told the bishop. And that went to the provincial. A priest is hearing confession outside the confessional. But that was simply reported, no censure or anything. When I look back on teaching in Phoenix and then San Diego, I realize somebody larger than me, way larger, had me in mind. And this whole obedience thing works. And to me, it no longer meant I had to engineer everything and make it the way I think it should. I can trust the way this thing works. There are different kinds of obedience. Oh, you could be really servile, say, sure, but your heart's not in it. No thought of, wait, how does that feel? Like, is this something wrong? Like in Vietnam, in the My Lai massacre, the higher ranking officials said, go ahead and kill those civilians. And some of the underlings say, they're not doing anything wrong. Yeah. So, did Don Merrifield have anything to worry about hiring me? Was that the end of the conflict? Oh, contraire. When there was a Vietnam protest on campus and the students threatened to go over the fence onto Hughes's property, they had an open mic out on Regent Square, and I was a young chaplain, and it occurred to me that these kids are going to get hurt. And all these Secret Service people are on campus and photographs are being taken. I just went up and I took the mic and I said, you know, I'm going down to that park at the end of Loyola Boulevard to pray for peace. If anybody wants to come with me, follow me. I'm just going and we'll observe all the rules of the road. And I just took off. And most of them followed me, which gave them something to do. But it didn't involve that kind of protesting. So when we got down to the cross on Manchester, the riot police, that's where they had staged. They had all these buses with the windows and the guys with the boards and helmets and the clubs. And it was like, oh, this is what they were ready for the supposed protest. So we show up and I look at the officer and I say, we're just here to pray for peace. Is that okay? And they were like, oh, okay. We waited for the traffic signals and we went into the park. Wow. It was like, wow, I'm glad we did this. It was also inspiration. And it's like, talk about obedience. It's kind of like following that, which seems like an authentic call, as opposed to maybe just Randy wants to do it this way. God works through that. So I just need to rely on that somehow this is part of a larger plan. It might be that some people will trust a priest who is willing to stay within bounds more than one who isn't. I don't know. I just trust the process.
You can't just pop restorative justice and restorative practices onto a system. You have to actually change things. Ben McBride says the wrong first question is, what do we need to do? The right first question is, who do we need to become?
And the hero is the one who knows when to surrender and what to surrender to. Follow your bliss.
This resonates with me so deeply. I mean, actions are important. Changing systems is important. Changing policy is important. And there's simultaneously this inward journey, looking inward to say, are my actions aligned with my values? And how do I need to heal in order to bring my actions in alignment with what I say I believe?
The inner world is the world of your requirements and your energies and your structure and your possibilities that meets the outer world.
College. That was a moment in my life where I really didn't know how to make that decision. My dad had attended Occidental College for a few semesters and had to drop out because he didn't have enough money to continue. I think he always idolized or idealized those small liberal arts colleges. So when my brother and I were making that decision about college, we just internalized that idea that small liberal arts colleges were better and that we should go there because it was my dad's dream. During my brother's first year of college, I went out to visit him with my dad and did a little college tour, visited him at Amherst, and we were kind of in a donut shop somewhere in New England. And I was like, I don't know, this or that, all these schools, they're so far away, I don't know anything. And this person who was sitting next to us, this older white man at the donut shop, he's like, are you applying to college? And I was like, yes, I don't know what I want to do. And he was like, well, what are you interested in? And I was like, well, I love to write. I want writing to be a big part of what I do. And I love learning languages. That was another passion. And he said, oh, well, you should go to Middlebury. And it turned out that that was the next stop on our tour. So the next day we drive up to Middlebury. We literally step out of the car. We look at those mountains. And I was like, I'm here. This is it. This is where I'm going.
Ascending the mountains is a standard theme for a spiritual quest and descent.
Well, it turned out to be a very mixed bag of experience going to Middlebury. It was challenging to be there as someone not from New England, someone not from a prep school background, not from a lot of wealth, middle class, but I felt poor in comparison. But I think it was the right place for me, as I think those lessons were really important. It definitely planted the seeds, even if on a very, very, very small scale, what it feels like to be othered. Going to Middlebury and seeing how monolithically white it was one of those things that hit me, just it hit me on a visceral level. It took me years to kind of unpack the meaning. Like, in what ways do I feel othered here? And what were all of the privileges that granted me access to this space, this neat space that most people in the world do not have access to?
When the story is in your mind, then you see its relevance to something happening in your own life, gives you perspective on what's happening to you.
After college, I got an internship in Washington, D.C. at a public policy lobbying firm that focused on women's health issues and public health issues. But what I was really feeling was that I really missed being in China because I'd been there for a year as a student. And my study abroad year, I went to China and lived in 3 different cities. And so the whole time I was in DC, I was learning so much. It was such a wonderful experience. And it wasn't my place. It wasn't where I wanted to be.
Call to adventure signifies that destiny has summoned the hero and transferred his spiritual center of gravity from within the pale of this society to a zone unknown.
When I was in my study abroad year, I traveled by myself from Beijing to Kashgar in what the Uyghurs call East Turkestan and what the Chinese call the Xinjiang province. So it's one of those contested areas around sovereignty, just north of Tibet, incidentally. So I was over there just kind of traveling around and I was just speaking to someone, and someone spoke to me and was like, "Oh my gosh, you speak Mandarin. If you spoke Spanish, I would hire you in a second." And I said, "Well, I do speak Spanish. What are you talking about?" He was like the head of some tour company that ran adventure trips in South America. And so then, flash forward, when I was in DC trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life? What should I do next? I reached out to him and he said, "We'd love to have you. And you've done so much with Mandarin. Do you know about Intrepid Travel?" It's this Australian run adventure tour company that runs trips, I believe, still in Asia. And so he was like, "Let me put you in touch with someone. I think you'd love them." And long story short, I got a job running adventure tours in China. I think what was hard was when I was studying Mandarin at Middlebury, most of my classmates were interested in working for Coca-Cola or working for the government. They wanted to do the big international stuff that always felt a little icky to me. And this was the first job really I'd heard of that would give me a chance to use my language skills and to continue to learn and travel. So I worked as an adventure tour leader for about a year.
One of our problems today is that we're not well acquainted with the literature of the spirit.
Equity, diversity, inclusion, restorative practices.
I don't believe in being interested in a subject just because it's said to be important. I believe in being caught by it somehow or other.
I would say the goal was not ever for it to become a job, because to me it's so much more than a job, that it's just a passion about who I am in the world and how I show up, the world I want to help create. Now, when I became a high school educator, I was in my mid-20s. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was on a hike with a friend from high school, one of my oldest friends, who's still one of my best friends. And I was like, "I don't know what I want to do. There's like business and government and all these jobs, and I'm just not interested in any of them." And she was like, "Well, how do you want to feel about your days? What do you want that to be about?" And I was like, "Well, I want to be inspired every single day. I want to help people in accomplishing their goals. And I want to learn new things every single day." And she was at the time teaching at her old high school. And she said, "Well, that's what I do every day. And I think you would really like it. And we're hiring." So I applied for a position working at the high school that I graduated from, teaching English to grades 9 through 12. And I got the job. And I had zero training. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I was terrified every day that I was letting these students down. So I began teaching there, and every day I thought I was a complete failure.
It's a terrifying experience to have your consciousness transformed. But there comes a time when life dismisses you and the folk idea unshells, the elementary idea, which guides you back.
And I realized very quickly that there was something about my identity as a white woman that I needed to explore, and that I needed to understand how systemic racism was playing out. Because I saw it playing out before my eyes. I taught AP English in the magnet program that was pretty Eurocentric and focused on, the classics, and had totally embraced white superiority. And then I was teaching English to ninth grade sheltered English students. So students who had been learning English as a second language and who had passed out of ESL, but were still not confident in their skills. And that was not in the magnet program. So I had the spectrum of abilities, experience, access to opportunities, and I just felt like there was something going on. And so I found my way to an organization called Aware LA, which stands for the Alliance of White Anti-Racists Everywhere in Los Angeles. And it's an affinity space where white people can come together to be like, why is this happening in this way? And what can I do about it? And so I would go to Saturday Dialogues every month. I still go to Saturday Dialogues 20 years later, as often as I can, to be in community with other white people who are struggling to figure out how we show up in solidarity and how we change these systems that have inequity kind of baked into them. So it was alongside my professional work that I found my way into a deep, deep investigation of whiteness and white supremacy culture. And ever since then, I've been doing that work alongside my professional work because it's necessary. Because I could not have stayed in education if I was not doing that work.
If a person isn't willing to paddle his own canoe, he's not going to get across the river.
Did the teaching thing, worked at, traditional public schools, private schools, charter schools. And I was kind of at a point where I was like, all right, I kind of understand the landscape here. I'm ready to learn more. I'm ready to figure out how else I can contribute. And I decided to become a graduate student in LMU's Educational Leadership for Social Justice program, while I was still teaching. I was a founding teacher at this little charter school where we were trying to use restorative justice as the foundation for our disciplinary system. And a year into our work together as a staff, the school closed due to low enrollment. I had planned to do a dissertation on my work with students at the school using restorative justice, and all of a sudden, I had no school and no students.
The ultimate aim of the quest must be neither release nor ecstasy for oneself, but the wisdom and the power to serve others.
So I had to redesign my plan, and I decided to focus on practitioners. Who are the people who are making things work? I really wanted to uplift their voices and their experiences. And so I interviewed incredible practitioners from across the Los Angeles area, pulling out themes of what does it take to effectively engage in restorative practices in schools? Is it even possible given the current structures? But because I had no job, one of my classmates said, well, I work in the teacher preparation department here at LMU, and we're hiring for a program coordinator position. So that's what I did. Wow, it was a great decision because I had time to breathe and think and reflect and read and all of that I really wouldn't have had in the same way if I were teaching at the same time.
I used to play in a jazz band, so I piled up money during a few years. And on that, you might say, I retired to the woods. I went up to Woodstock. I just read and read and read and read for 5 years.
And while I was in that role, one of my dissertation committee members, Talia Gonzalez, she offered to do a talk at LMU. I asked around, I got support, we put together this event. And the event was about a report that she and another person had co-authored on the adultification of Black girls in schools and how it negatively impacts Black girls. When the event happened, it was, in fact, amazing. The room was beyond capacity. And I looked around and it was mostly people of color. And I was like, what's going on? Where are all the white people who need to be learning about this? So I debriefed the situation with a friend of mine. I knew him from Aware LA. And there were already affinity groups for all the different ethnic and racial groups except the white folks. And so, because we had our experience with Aware LA, we were able to start, along with another colleague, Aware LMU. And those affinity groups were kind of organized and housed by the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. That's how I first became a known person in terms of my work in that area.
And I remember that I just didn't have anybody to tell me what to read, so I began pulling these things together.
When we all went home for the pandemic, one of the things I was doing was being involved in 12 workshops a month for all the white folks who found us on social media, who were trying to find ways to address racism. And I was contacted by the vice president for the DEI office at LMU. She and the rest of the team had never really run workshops online like that before. And so, because I was doing a lot of that already, they just invited me to be part of the facilitation team. And through that time of working with them, she invited me to be part of a team that was going to apply for a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center. We came up with the idea together that it would be working toward a cross-campus integration of restorative practices, because there was already amazing work happening on campus. But there wasn't the mechanism for coordinating and connecting all of it. Then we were awarded office space in the CSJ Center, and then the team decided to create a position for me to run that initiative. That's how I got into that role. So, long and circuitous journey.
Don't be afraid. Doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be.
And this opportunity at UCLA just came up out of nowhere. Oh, that sounds interesting. It seems like an opportunity to kind of apply my skills in a different setting, different context, an institution at a totally different scale. So I think honestly, more than anything, it was my curiosity. UCLA feels like it's kind of Oz in a way, like you're going to Oz, like you're seeing behind the curtain. And I was intrigued by the opportunity, intrigued by the challenge. And up until they offered me the job, I didn't believe it was going to happen. I was perfectly happy at LMU. I was perfectly happy to stay. And when the offer came, I was like, okay, I know what I know here, and I love it here. And I will always be connected to the people I have been building this work with. And what might be possible if we expanded? How can we be in deeper, broader community together if we're doing work that's aligned?
Dream consciousness is further in. It's a creative consciousness.
I have big dreams for what we can do in the region as we have more and more schools interested in racial healing work, a vision for restorative culture, and really digging in and doing the work. It's all connected. I think that it's true that I have had the opportunity, that the vision for my job is aligned with my values.
As Novalis said, the seat of the soul is there where the inner and outer worlds meet.
The work that needs to be done, it's not bound by any job. Jobs come and go, but this work is the work of many lifetimes.
If you follow your bliss, doors will open for you that wouldn't have opened for anyone else.
And I've been in a continual journey of learning all the time.
I started at LMU as a temp. My mentor back then and a friend, Tangi Smith Hill, was the director of credentialing back in 2011. And she said, it's a temp job. We'd like you to come in for the summer and just help with TFA. That's Teach for America. And I said, well, I don't know. Am I supposed to be certified kind of thing? She's like,
Joy, I've seen you in action.
I previously worked at Bloomingdale's, and we'd known each other prior to that, but
You're good at handling people. You might want to give it a try.
so I don't know. because I'm thinking, higher ed? I'm like, I don't know anything, right?
All you need is training, and I'm the one to train you.
I don't want to say it was a fluke because I believe everything happens for a reason. God brings people into our lives for a reason. And so I'm thankful to her because she trained me how to be a credential analyst, you know? But she also, she had an education background.
You're coming in, you're dealing with educators, you're dealing with administrators and teachers, and you have to be firm. You have to know the state standards, you have to set forth the law and carry it through the programs.
I didn't think I was going to last because Tangi was such a stickler to the law.
You have to give the right answer to the educator, to the district, and you can't just blurt it out because nobody's going to respect you if you give too many wrong answers.
She was tough, tough. Sometimes I thought, wow, she hates me. But
Don't doubt yourself. If you show doubt in your voice or in an email or just with the people that we have to serve, they're going to doubt you and they're going to question you. Make sure you do a thorough evaluation. You don't have to be rushed, no matter how much under pressure you are.
the first 2 years was the hardest because, I was a green P and I would do like silly mistakes, right? And she would never answer my questions. There were times when I felt like I was in the Matrix and she was Morpheus and I was Neil Anderson. So I had to think before like being a green P. I came from the garment industry way back in the early 90s.
You know what? It doesn't matter where you're coming from. You have the skills. Use what you learned when you were at FITM and when you were in the garment industry and in retail. And don't let their titles intimidate you. The EDs, the PhDs, the MAs, we are just as important in this industry. But you have to feel that and you have to embody that.
And that was a game changer for me. By the end of 2012, they offered me the job. So she trained me to do what I do now for the last 13 years. And we are still friends to this day. She left in 2016. And I told her, I said, thank you for being tough. And she just smiled.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of the path of me doing what I do. And I just wanted to learn as much as I can. I wanted to do the best job because that's how I grew up. Filipino, right? I was a nosy kid. Some parents didn't appreciate that, but it's okay. My parents did. My mom was always our leader, a very strong figure. She basically had the balls to move from the Philippines and said, hey, we should make a life here. She was a nurse, a jack of all trades, surgery, emergency, everything. That's how she was trained. Back then in the 70s, there was an open invitation to Filipino nurses to the United States, actually the whole world, saying, we will grant you immigration status. We need nurses. So she took that opportunity. She took my oldest sister and my dad stayed with us. I was only one. And my two older siblings, he left the following year in 75. And mind you, back in the Philippines, we live very comfortably. This is back in the 70s. We had nannies, we had drivers. So this was a story of starting all over. I feel like my mom was a pioneer because she was a nurse and my dad was a manager for Pep Boys. And in the early 80s, their roles changed. My dad worked the night shift so he could be with me and my siblings. During the day, my mom took the day shift, and she would be home by 5, 6. And the beauty was, we grew up with my father because he was there for all my moments. You see a lot of fathers now at home, but my dad was there in those days. He was still the patriarch, but he was like the matriarch too. It was this combination. They made things work for all of us. And from there, I realize I'm mirroring that with my kids and in my marriage with so much love and support from my husband. I mean, my God, I can't believe we have a 24-year-old and a 26-year-old, Amir and Bijan. They grew up with my parents. When I'm with my sisters and their kids and all our families and my brother in Jersey, my nephews and my nieces, we carry on my parents. My father's name is Isidro Icasiano, and my mother's name is Erlinda. I miss them both deeply. When my dad passed in 2015, my mom was like, Joy, Anak, I don't want to die alone. 2020, she did get COVID. She kind of knew she was going to go, but she was hospitalized. So my sister, who's a nurse, she said, Doctor, okay, I can take care of my mom. And they gave my sister all the things to keep her at home to make her feel comfortable. My other sister had COVID, so we had to separate. So I was in the backyard by her beautiful mother's beautiful bay window, just sending my love. I talked to her and I recorded it. For me, it was beautiful and sad at the same time. This is like being Catholic, and I guess being Filipino. I'm just going to throw that in there. You have to embrace life and you have to embrace the good and the bad, right? Yeah, I saw my beautiful mom in her bed, and I saw my beautiful sister Meg, the nurse, just taking care of her for all of us. I told my husband, I said it was the most beautiful thing I've witnessed. Meg did everything to make sure she got home. She died at home peacefully. We always have taken care of each other. It's a Filipino thing. But you know what? I'll keep it with my family. We always took care of each other. And I say this out loud so my mom can hear. I say, you were strong for all of us, but you were strong for me. You know, we could laugh like girlfriends. We laughed so hard, both our eyes in tears, ribs hurting, tummy like, oh my God. That's how we got along. My mom would be like, Joy, Anak, you should wear more prints. You should wear more dresses. And I was, no, I don't want to. No, right? But you know what? I'm probably going to wear a dress tomorrow. I'm wearing more floral dresses and more girly prints. Fashion-wise, I'm going to work it. But it's really an homage to my mom. And it's funny because I think it was Mother's Day or something. And me and my sisters were together with all our kids. And we were at Benihana in Seal Beach. And I realized I'm wearing a floral dress. And I look at my two big sisters. They're wearing like a floral top and a floral blazer. And we all laugh. It's like, Mom. And she's saying, see, I told you guys. 2016, we went back to the Philippines. We spent Christmas there. We were flying back home. I said, thank you for bringing us and making our lives in Los Angeles. And she looked at me. She knew exactly what I was going to say. Because imagine if we still lived in the Philippines and me or my other siblings wanted to come to the United States. It is 50 times harder now. You brought us here, and all of us made our families here. Your beautiful grandkids are here. You and Dad provided all of this. And I think we had a moment. She's like, you're welcome. She's like, this is what I wanted for all of us. She knew inherently that this was the right thing to do. Both my parents. Sorry, Dad. Got to give him credit too. I know they're watching over all of us. My oldest son, Bijan, is an officer in the Redondo Beach Police Department, and my son, Amir, is an alumni of LMU 2021. Bijan was very close to my father, and he's like, Gramps, I want to be an officer. My father says, that's your calling. I respect that, but you have to promise me one thing. When you become an officer, patrol in a patrol car. Promise me you will never be a motorcycle officer. And my son promised him that. Now our youngest, Amir, says, Mom and Dad, I want to be in the entertainment industry. And my husband dropped his mouth. Oh my God, I was quiet, just letting it process. Please don't tell me you want to be an actor. No, I don't want to be an actor. I want to be behind the scenes, like a producer. Okay, producer. I feel better. When he went to St. Monica High, he was on the golf team because my father taught both my sons how to play golf. And Amir just fell in love with the sport. And when he graduated, Monsignor Torgerson, he loved golf. And with his connections, he said, let me see what I can do for you at Riviera Country Club. So Amir started caddying at one of the businessmen, and one of the businessmen that he was caddying for stuck as a mentor in the entertainment industry. So Amir went into TV as a production assistant. Now he's a production coordinator. 10 years ago, Bijan was here and he was like, Mom, this job is so boring. And I was just laughing. I'm thinking, he's a high schooler. I'm not going to listen to a high schooler. I love this job. I know that I am assisting each student. I'm being the gateway for that educator to the California teaching credential. Dr. Litton says, it's not rocket science. But we are saving lives. And there is a bit of drama in that. Our instructors are teaching our students at a very young age. And I usually don't see them. I'm more like backstage. So for the majority of them, if they're here seeing me, something's up with that. It's traumatic. It's like, Joy, I don't know what to do. Or, Joy, life took me and I got married. Or, yeah, I got divorced now and I have to start all over. And here I am with my Asian face, just listening. I say, we'll figure it out. I'll work with my colleagues to see whatever we can do to help you move forward. I mean, I can't be anxious like them, right? That nervous energy is not going to do anything. So I've learned all these years is just to stay calm and cool.
First,
listen to what is going on, assess it, and then give my recommendation.
and don't be rushed. You are still
representing the commission and the state standards of California and LMU. So everything has to be aligned. I will set forth that path for the educator to fulfill their credential requirements. I will execute it, whoever they are. Yeah, because once they're in my office, once they hit my desk, yeah, I take care of them.
Whoa.
I think the garment industry and my design background, because I've dealt with very, very neurotic and very excited people. And sometimes I have to calm down some of my colleagues, right? I'm just like, don't be reactive. Assess it first. That was Tangi.
Listen, assess, recommend.
One time I asked Amir, how was your game? He's like, Mom, I was a little anxious. Like in the beginning, I kept messing up because I was too reactive. And I realized, you know what? I let it go. And it got better. Everything in your life has a lesson. The golf was like, I go back to my dad. Thank you, Dad, for what you gave Amir. I feel like my parents and hopefully me and my husband will leave that legacy. It's not my job. It's my privilege to carry that legacy, that love and support. It's always been about caring for that whole person. I guess that's what I carry when I do my job. I have so much fun with this because I feel like, okay, well, it's just paper pushing, but I'm proud of where I am. I'm a proud paper pusher and problem solver.
Because once they hit your desk,
Boom.
Have you ever watched Undercover Boss on TV? Yeah, Undercover Boss is the CEO or whatnot. They disguise themselves and then they notice everything that we've been doing. Every single time I watch it, I cry. Well, obviously, we don't do things to become a hero, but when people notice some of the things that we do, well, that's the part that can touch each other. Somebody notices. And I think that part is heaven. Oh, it's only God who notices and can appreciate so deeply. Yeah, when people ask, so what do you do? Oh, I hate it because, I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm working. It's part of my life. Huh? So my daytime job is a campus ministry. It's also my full-time responsibility for spiritual direction. Then at night, I am a resident minister. I live with the students. And then during the weekend, I go to Chinatown to one of those Chinese Catholic churches called St. Bridget. And I'm DRE, Director of Religious Education. Oh, it's a small parish. And then another thing I do when I have time is, I teach with the Dayton University for their virtual learning community for faith formation. Well, I do that because one of my degrees is in learning technology. Oh, technology is moving so fast. I just want to do something to maintain what I learn and allow that part to stimulate me to extend what I can do for others. Mm-hmm. I call myself undercover nun. Because I'm a transfer sister. Before, I belonged to the Sacred Heart Sisters. And they do have a habit, but not the traditional one. No, it's all beige. It was a badge with a sacred heart. But now we don't have it anymore. In the beginning, I struggled because of the culture. I remember going to Canada and visiting my mom one year. Some people, they just don't understand that we don't have a habit. We took it off. Sorry. I tried to explain to people Or some people will even follow you and yell at you because you don't have a habit. And they say, "Who do you think you are?" Oh, nobody. We even went to a pilgrimage with the church people one day in Canada. And they have a bus. And the priests knew that I'm a nun. And the priest, he introduced himself and said, "By the way, there is a sister here too." He handed me the microphone and said, "Here you go, introduce yourself." How rude. So then I said, "Well, hello, I'm Sister Maria, a St. Joseph's sister, and I'm an undercover nun." Whatever. This is not the place or time to do education, right? But you have to find ways, and then sometimes you don't know what you have. And the Holy Spirit just steps in and does the thing. That's why I cannot say I'm working. How can you say that to listen to people's sacred stories is working? That's just not right, see? Like if somebody comes and asks me something, I don't say, it's over there. No, I go with them. So that takes time. Sometimes it's the right thing to do. And if somebody was willing to walk with me, halfway at least, there, I would just be so appreciative, right? So I want to be that person. So I'm trying to gain some trust. Oh, even at Catholic school, a lot of people here, they are not Catholic. Oh, they're all over. But that does not matter. I don't necessarily want to convince people of my own religion. Oh, if they are Buddhists or Muslims or Jewish people, I want them to love God more. So every Tuesday, every week, we're supposed to have an open door. But I realized after living here for 13 years, it's my 14th year coming. I realized that everybody likes food. I am a foreigner, so I have a special place in my heart to really go out of my way for international students. So I will have like 2 pots like this big. I have hot pots with the students. 109 people having hot pot. Oh, well, they bring their friends and a friend and another friend. I said, I don't care who's coming. I just need people to eat the food. I don't have space to keep all this. So from that, people get to know me. Oh, I don't know their name. I can't remember all the names. But they recognize me more. So we just call each other girlfriend, boyfriend. I said, if you're hanging out long enough, I'll learn. But then most of the time, when I recognize their name in this subtle conversation, I refer to their name. They will pause most of the time and say, "Hey, did you just call me by my name? I'm still a girlfriend, right?" By the time I get to learn their names, they really don't want a name anymore. So you try to create a rapport so that there will be an easier conversation because they think that you know them and you want to know. So that's a kind of Chinese mafia. I trick them into a better relationship without knowing somebody's name. So shady, but it works. Yes, I like working with young people. Oh, they teach me about walking fast and talking slower. They taught me what is the smell of. I don't even know. Some drugs they're taking. I just thought it's some kind of gunk. But they've taught me a lot. I'm a learner. Well, I'm teachable. As a spiritual director, I literally shared their pain too. There are students who are ready to make a change. And there are people that keep calling. They're still holding on to something that they cannot change. So, do you accept them? Do you stay with them? You can say, adios, you're so mean, right? So yeah, it's not that easy. I believe a lot of the bad choices we have, if we have what God sees and his vision, I think we will choose the same thing. Yeah, I really, really believe. Oh, gosh, you're like my kindred spirit or something. I tell you everything. Oh, growing up, I moved from Hong Kong to Canada. In my family, we took turns to go to study, and my brother and sister already graduated, and it was my turn. I was studying tourism management. I was supposed to have a life of joy, going out there, traveling. And I remember these foreign missionaries. They came from Ireland and America. But I don't know if they go home to visit their family. Oh, so I think, oh, gosh, if I have a company, I definitely want them to go home. I will give them a free ticket. But lo and behold, I only have like 4 months more to graduate. But I knew if I graduated, I wouldn't want to go to a convent. So the timing was right. I said to myself, I'm going to give God a chance first. And if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to school. But it doesn't go like that because you really want to follow. You know, you're not just trying to see. Deep down, you know it is a calling. Yeah. The worst part was that my father wrote me a letter saying he's going to come and visit for my renewal of vows in 1989. He was 63, but he didn't make it. He died of a heart attack. But then because of my status of immigration, the Sacred Heart Sisters held my passport. And they are not foreigners, so they don't know how to keep my status correctly. So I became an illegal person. I couldn't go home to bury my own father. So then again, you have to pray. So, okay, again, I can go home. I can say bye-bye to you people I have known for several years. Or, what is it? Why is it this happened? I was assigned in Reno at that time. And all I got to do is to teach Sunday school. And I think because of this non-distracting lifestyle with prayer, I healed so well. I literally felt God. And the way of the healing was so real, and the process was so authentic that I'm still using that method to help other people. Everybody has pain, you know. How are you going to deal with it? And it's helpful every time when I walk with people like that. They get it because it's real. It works. So I put all my eggs that I am going to bury my mother. I'm going to go home. I got a beautiful rosary ring. You put flowers instead of beads. You put real life roses. My mother always said, don't cry. I'm so ready to be with your dad. But guess what? It was COVID. I couldn't go home either. Can you imagine? So I think all of this, there is a learning. This world is really just temporary, right? Yeah, because of the sacrifice, because of the resurrection, because at the mercy of the love of God. So that's the assurance. If I have a choice to choose, I choose for them to go to heaven. So I have learned. I don't ask God, why? I ask God, what are you trying to say? Isn't that a better question? So, those are the things that are God-given. There's so much consolation. I went to Spain during spring break, and we landed on my birthday. Now, who is thinking, when is your birthday? In my family, we don't really celebrate. Mom might cook you a really good meal. That's it. So it's not like, oh, I'm waiting for you to celebrate me. But lo and behold, God knows everything. And on that day, we go to Montserrat. So when you go up, everybody will try to touch the Black Madonna, right? And the choir was there. So when they were ready to sing, and the line was really long, so we line up. The second when I touched the Black Madonna, the choir started to sing. And that was my 60th birthday. How can you arrange that, right? So God knows. God knows. And before, when the Sacred Heart Sisters went to Rome to have a personal audience with the Pope, I couldn't go because of my passport. But then, 3 years later, in 1987, JP2 came to America and celebrated a Mass at the Colosseum. Well, if you look at the order, there's no way that it's my turn. I didn't do enough to get that. But somehow, I got to receive communion with the Pope. So on that day when we practice, the Monsignor was practicing with us. And he said, no kneeling down, no kissing the ring. Isn't it that Jesus comes to you is good enough? Then I got it. When the whole community went to see the Pope, I didn't get to go. But this time, the Pope and Jesus came to me. Do you ever complain again? God knows that is undercover boss. There are those kinds of moments where you say, okay, I can deal with it. If we're able to, we should try to catch the goodness in other people. Because in the word good, we see the word God. In life, we can make a lot of choices. But the minute when you and I die, we don't need to be goodness anymore. Heaven is a place that is all good. So, all those good things I am doing here on earth, it will be my eternity story to share. In the show Undercover Boss, they help life a little bit more for other people so that they can feel the goodness of themselves. You know, God is the one undercover boss. And I think that is the essence.
I love to be able to bring the students to the wetlands to see the native plants that were there hundreds of thousands of years ago. When we walked around the Native American burial mound the other day, I said to the kids, regardless of your religious denomination, as we walk around the burial mound, would you please say a silent prayer for those buried there? Let's give them some good energy from us. I do that out of respect. I don't follow any religious format. I'm not religious in any way. My grandmother on my father's side was very Catholic and thought that all of us were going to go to hell because we were not baptized. I get my religion out of nature. I always have. I go back to how I was brought up. I was taught to be good at what I did, do my best job. I always did. And clearly, I excelled because of the wonderful support that I got from my mother and my grandmother. They were very spiritual. They still felt the need to communicate with people who had passed on. They would talk lovingly about spirits and the dead. There was a spiritualist capital of the world outside of Buffalo, New York, called Lilydale. It's quite a profound place, a home of mediumship and spiritual healing. And the family used to go to mediums. This one medium said to my grandmother, "We worked." She was obviously communicating with loved ones who had passed away, and said, "We worked so hard to get him off that field." And my grandmother had no idea what that meant. My Uncle Mike was severely injured in World War II. He couldn't use his hands. The Red Cross nurses were writing letters home to my grandmother on his behalf. "I'm fine, Mom." But she could tell it wasn't his writing. And she's like, "Oh my God, he's blind. Oh my God, what happened?" Because he couldn't say what happened, right? He didn't want her to know how bad off he was, like 39 surgeries, and some of them without anesthesia. Years later, when he was home, one of the few times he spoke about things from the war, he said, "Mom, the bomb went off." He apparently had hit some kind of mine in the field. He said, "I don't know what made me get up and run, but I ran and I ran and I collapsed on the road. And just then a Red Cross truck was coming. I would have died." So my grandmother hears that on top of what she had heard from the medium. Makes you wonder, it's woo, woo, woo. It'll scare some people, make some people think, "Oh, she's crazy." But I'm sorry. When you hear stories like this, where a medium who doesn't even know you says, "We worked so hard to get him off that field," and she has no context for what that means until her son confirms it. And so, from a little girl, this really affected my childhood. It made me realize life was hard. And I'm realizing as I get older that whatever tools are that people use to get through life and life's challenges, it's all good as long as it's part of the life force and the energy of this earth. My mother, here she is, a divorced mother. God love her. When my mother divorced my dad, it was not the norm. And I remember being horribly embarrassed in class when I would have to fill out a form saying, "Who's my parent?" And I would put my mother's name. And some of the teachers were really insensitive. And in front of the entire class, they would call my name. And, "Why did you list your mother's name?" And I'd be like a deer in headlights. That was my childhood, my brothers and I. During summer vacation, with my mom working full time, my brothers and I would go down to an abandoned quarry down the street. We would go down and spend the entire summer down in that quarry. And so would my friends in the neighborhood. We practically lived there. The quarry had a spring-fed lake. There was so much life around the lake, and where it rained, there were trees and bushes, and We had so many magical experiences. We had so much fun, so many spontaneous, beautiful moments. And I just remember those as lazy, wonderful days, you know? My love for nature came very early. We really were outdoorsy and into sports and nature, and we were safe. I helped to raise my two brothers when my mom had to go back to work. And my grandmother was part of the family and helped us, but I really took on the reins of, you know, kind of managing the house and helping cook dinner and take care of my brothers. Unfortunately, to a certain extent, my mother felt so bad about divorcing my dad and removing a father figure from their lives that they were kind of coddled and treated a little bit differently than I was. I was expected to help out as one of the matriarch women of the family. And it's very common for the women of that era. You graduate from college, you have a degree, what are you going to do? Okay, you can be a secretary or administrative assistant. Do you have any connections? No. I had a degree in communications from the State University of New York at Buffalo. It was pretty tough going. And I had grandiose dreams. I wanted to move to California, become a film editor, or this or that. A friend of my mother's, Jane Hurley, was running her own personnel business in New York City. Again, she was ahead of her time and breaking ground. She saw that I was kind of languishing in Buffalo. She kept saying, come to New York. I'll help you get a job. Come to New York. She had to fight my mother and grandmother because they didn't want me to go. And I was terrified at the idea because, yeah, I'm this little homespun girl from Buffalo. But I did. I went to New York and she got me my first real big job, CBS. And that started my career in entertainment. She has been such an anchor for me and taught me the business and how to behave and when to get upset and when to just let it go, you know? And that's such a good lesson. Talk about being thrown into an interesting situation. The shock of living in a big city after coming from the suburbs of Buffalo was quite a lot for me. I fell in love with Central Park. It's a birding mecca. I was in heaven there. I was always looking for nature because I knew what it did for my soul. It just realigned me. In my mind, it was a spiritual quest to be realigned with the forces of nature. I decided I really wanted to move to California. I thought my connections at CBS would get me somewhere. One of the connections was an executive who lived and worked in LA at the CBS affiliate there, but would visit New York periodically. When I came to California, I went to meet with him. And I said, you know, I really would love to continue to work for CBS. Is there a position available that I would be qualified for? It was very clear to me at the time, to get where I needed to go, I would have to give him some favors. I declined. It was a learning experience. I was pretty discouraged, but not surprised. I said to myself, well, I'm on my own. I signed up with a temp agency that specifically hired people to work for the different movie studios. I worked for Dino De Laurentiis and MGM and Paramount Pictures. And I kept being called back to Paramount because I was good at what I did. And I loved the essence and the energy of Paramount Pictures. It was at that time in the late 80s, the #1 movie studio in the world. And I got promoted up the ranks from assistant secretary to eventually vice president overseeing 2 different departments. We had what was called Community Day. every month we would do something in the neighborhood or in the city to do good. I would always pick something to do with removing weeds or planting trees. That's what I kept gravitating to over and over. So clearly I was being drawn to it. Then once a year, we had what was called Via Community Day, where everybody on the entire lot could not go to work. You had to go do something good in the community. Meanwhile, I was volunteering for a nonprofit called Friends of Bayona Wetlands in Playa del Rey. I just liked the energy of the organization there. Very clean message of saving and restoring the wetlands. I've been a member for almost as long as I've been in Southern California, 35 years. And now in my new capacity at Paramount Pictures, I'm on this committee of volunteer work. We would bring this whole entourage of Paramount employees to go volunteer. So that theme was always there. Do you know what all our grandmothers and grandfathers told us to do? Do a good job, you'll be rewarded. Well, not necessarily. Fast forward to 19 years of working at Paramount Pictures, and they decided to let go of some people. I was on the top of the list to be laid off one year. And it's funny because the year before, I had received an award from Sumner Redstone saying I was an outstanding employee, and it was this big deal. And then the next year, I'm laid off. I was given till the end of the day to pack up my things. But we let it go. And I had to pick up myself. I went into my own gardening business named Giardino della Vita, after my grandmother. I had clients and I would put in native plants. And it turned out the nonprofit Friends of Bayona Wetlands, where I had been volunteering for years, was looking for a new executive director. And I decided, I think I'd like to do this job. So I applied and I got it. I had such a great ride there. I worked with wonderful people. One of my favorite memories of my job is under my watch, we went into more Title I underserved schools than ever before. We knew that was really important to get the kids out into nature. I realized how important that was because here's that latchkey kid, my brothers and I at that abandoned quarry down the street. I realized how important that was for children that maybe had never been out in the wild, where magical, spontaneous things could happen. I remember this one group of little girls out on the trail with me. And I came upon what you call them, a snake skin, a garter snake, a gopher snake skin. And at first, they were terrified, and I said, no, wait a minute. I said, this is not the snake. The snake's gone. And here's the skin. But look how beautiful the skin is. And the snake won't hurt you. By the end of that moment, I had the kids holding the skin and touching it, feeling it. And I got them over that hump. I had children turn to me and go, this is the best day of my life. And you want to break out crying. Those are the transformational moments. I get to experience getting children excited about nature. That was my fate. I was executive director of the Friends for 7 years, and I was lured away by another nonprofit, G2 Galleries in Venice. I was overseeing all their programs there. The funders, Susan and Dan Gottlieb, after 9.5 years, decided they wanted to close the gallery. And they said, "Where do you want to work? We will pay for your job." I had gotten to know Eric Strauss at Loyola Marymount University Center for Urban Resilience over the 10 years I had been in Southern California. I liked his attitude, and I loved the work they were doing, very similar to what we were doing at the Friends of Ballona Wetlands. I'm now in that job, going on into my 6th year, and basically the ambassador for the department, the resident expert naturalist on the Ballona watershed. I mean, I had 30 some years to walk the trails. I teach workshops. I'm a guest lecturer. I give tours of the park. It's very physical. We have people that are interested in the film industry. We have students that are interested in education, in the arts. I love what I do. A big part of what our center does is we go into communities to help them with restorative justice issues. They go hand in hand. You know, if you're not taking care of the people, you can't take care of the wildlife. And while we have some great things to share about wildlife, many of our audiences are so distracted by pressures of modern day living that to get through to them seems to be more challenging than ever before. It makes my heart break. And so our message constantly is, how do we get it back in balance? How do we get it in sync? Yes, we can have all these modern, wonderful amenities, but there's a price. Doug Tallamy says, we are nature's best hope. I love nature so much, but I love people too. I want to see us find that balance, and I'll do anything I can. I'm not trying to change the world because I know I can't. But what I can do is demonstrate and show the beauty that I see. And hopefully, the person that I'm showing it to sees it too and realizes that they can find that tranquility and happiness in the beauty of this earth, the beauty in the people and the animals and wildlife that live on it.
In need of healing and compassion, we ask for the grace
to catch the goodness of other people,
To take care of each other.
To be inspired every single day to help people in accomplishing their goals.
To demonstrate and show the beauty I see.
to listen to each other's sacred stories,
that people become free and learn themselves.
In a continual journey of learning.
To find the tranquility and happiness in the beauty of this earth.
To heal.
To liberate.
so that all may be one.
We're just here to pray for peace. Is that okay?
Lisa Fimiani.
Sister Maria Lai,
Joy Pirsaheli.
Ariane White.
Randy Roche, S.J.
Good afternoon. I am Sister Ariane Hippert, Associate Director of the CSJ Center. Thank you to those who made that fabulous performance possible. I know that you, family, friends, and colleagues all have been moved and inspired by the lives and contributions of our honorees today through the magnificent stories written by our writers and portrayed by our actors. Now, to continue our celebration on behalf of the CSJ Center, it gives me great pleasure to present each honoree with a tile designed by one of our sister artists, Ellen O'Leary. We believe that the sentiments expressed in Sister Ellen's description of the piece convey why we hope this gift will be a lovely reminder to each recipient of this special day. So in Ellen's words, the tapestry symbolizes your life. The weaving of the colors reminds you of the people woven in your life that you have touched and those who have influenced you. The gold spaces are those moments when your heart has expressed great compassion and service. You have blessed our planet, and yet the tapestry is not finished. May your continual presence express the beauty of your person. So now the presentation to each of our honorees, who also will have a chance to say a few words. Lisa Fimiani.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say I am so blessed to be in the presence of the other honorees. I loved hearing your story, and this means so much to me. This is so beautiful. I'm going to try to keep doing what I do because it's from my heart and my essence, and thank you all so much for this honor.
Sister Maria Lai.
Thank you very much for the time that you spend with us. And I think without you and the way you taught us how to be a better person, better believer, we won't be here today. So I thank you for the honor, and we pray for each other. Thank you.
Father Randy Roche.
Oh, well, I hope that you can see this. Maybe you need to see me as well. I'm not quite sure. This was really an amazing adventure for me, and I thank you. I never would have thought this was possible to have such an adventure, to have my life opened up even for me. I know something about myself and about the world and about the people that we love. Thank you so very much, all of you.
Joy Pirsaheli.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for being part of my journey, and for everyone that I worked with Dory and with Maria. But I just want to say thank you. I'm honored with the honorees to be here in your presence. So thank you.
Ariane White.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for this really special honor. It means a lot to me to be part of this amazing community of people, and I'm grateful to be part of this cohort of Hidden Heroes.
We have mailed each of our recipients a gift certificate so that they may enjoy a meal with their loved ones. And please enjoy yourselves and know that we are celebrating with you all in spirit. On behalf of Sister Judith, Dory, Michael, Maria, Colin, and me, good afternoon and thank you for celebrating with us today. We will now bring on the company of actors and writers to join us.
Good afternoon, everyone. We would ask all of you to turn your visual on and audio on and welcome the team. So I am so delighted to see that almost all of our writers were available. Two of them have family events that were not able to come with us, one actor and one writer, but the rest of the company is here. Congratulations again to our honorees. And a huge thank you to the company that made this possible. What we want to do now is just really, really informally allow you guys to talk to each other. Some of you have not ever met your own actors. So Lisa, I'm not sure, if you had met Joan yet or not? There she is. And I think who else would not have met? Maria, Karen has a family event in New York. She called and said, sorry, she would not be with us. So I think the rest of our people are here. So do you want to just, perhaps Dory and I are going to kind of guide you through this session, just kind of facilitate it a bit. Are there things that the writers and storytellers would like to say to each other or to your actors? Are there some thoughts or responses about the process, how that worked for you? Or
Yeah, I have something for Maria Lai. I don't know if you know this. I worked on a piece several years ago with you and Sister Barbara, and it inspired me to volunteer for the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking for it almost an entire year. So you inspired me to that volunteer work, and I just wanted to thank you for that, Sister Maria.
Thank you so very much. I think when the first time I was working with all of you, I'm just in awe of the talents. Just by story you captured closely to the story. You didn't really take any 5% or 0.1% off of the whole story. It's really keep to the truth and giving that honor to other people who has lived this life to teach us how to be the best of ourselves. So thank you.
I'm just going to make one, Dory and Michael, my Wi-Fi is unstable and did go off before. So if it goes off, just continue. Okay. All right. Anyone else want to share? Writers to actors or storytellers?
Lisa, did Lisa raise her hand? It looks on here like Lisa raised her hand.
Oh, just speak
I
out.
did, but I'm not one of the actors.
Oh, no, any of you that want to talk to each other.
You know what I wanted to share? Everybody's story had such an amazing thread, and it's about God and about deep faith. And I was really taken by that. And each one of us, it manifested differently. And it was just so fascinating to hear everyone's stories.
Yes, thank you for mentioning the word thread, because Judith and I have taught verbatim theater and have done lots of programs where we do things based on interviews with people. And often we know what we're going to talk about before we go in. We know what the theme is going to be. But in the case of Hidden Heroes, we really just talk to 5 people and figure out what the theme is after they've talked. So I was really curious in finding out what the different threads are in this piece today. And I know that what I was hearing in this one is how in each one of these stories, everybody finds kind of a helper. And I thought that was really kind of interesting that they find the person who's going to help them get to the next spot. And that to me was important. But Shelby, you had your hand up. Did you have an idea about that?
Well, I was just going to say what was tremendous is if you're reading a great book, you can kind of put yourself into the situation. You feel like you're along with the character's ride. But when you do something like we actors got to do, you actually get to inhabit that person. And in a way, it almost bleeds through. I feel like I was in some of the places and doing some of the things that Randy did, just because I like it feels visceral to me, and in a way that just reading someone's amazing stories, but the work that these writers did and us getting to be the characters or to be these people, it was such a gift for me, and it was just at the right time. So I just feel very lucky and thankful.
What was it like, Randy, hearing yourself? Hearing
This
your words.
this whole process was amazing. As I say, it was self-revelatory. I mean, when Mark interviewed and then put it together, it was like I didn't kind of appreciate that's what was really going on, but I really loved it. And then Shelby just ran with it. Yeah, I felt like it was a better homily than I ever could have given if I had tried.
Mark.
Yeah, I can only echo that. Well, you and Judith probably know it best, Dory, and all the writers who've done this before. But so I feel like so much of my creative life is about making things up, and who knows where that comes from. Again, I know it doesn't come from me, but it's drawing from wherever. And this is the the opposite experience of attending to the artistry of the world and of God moving through our lives and things like that, and of the way that people speak and the stories they tell. Like, again, when you talk about threads, it wasn't until the second interview and going back to them all that I saw, oh, wait a second, Randy had set up this whole Vietnam context at the very first story he told me. He had sewn it in there, and because it was there, then later on when he brings up My Lai, like it all sort of comes, and then there's a protest, then there's like one final one, and so again, but that's the English major in me. But there's also of course just the pure beauty of just getting to attend to people's lives is really really wonderful, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
It's a privilege.
It is also a frightening experience if you are the receiver, if you're the awardee, to hear somebody else tell your story, particularly in a communal setting like this. The heroism doesn't just end with what you did to get honored. It is also there because you went through this process. And I do know that the experience of that, because I've had my story told one time and it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. So congratulations, you become double heroes as of today. So anything else about the process? The process of either living those stories, sharing them, hearing them come back to you, performing them, writing them, anything else you want to share, particularly people within their own teams.
We were lucky on the Joy, Dory, Maria team because we all got to meet together, the three of us, which was really, really nice. Before actually, so I think it was like after the interview, before writing and rehearsing it, and so that was really fun. And how did it feel to finally see it, Joy?
I feel like Sister Judith. I was slightly horrified because the honor of being a hidden hero, I know earlier you mentioned, I just love being under the radar. Now I'm not so much with my lovely 4 honorees, but it has been a journey. It was very moving when Maria and you, Dory, were in my office, kind of going through what you're going to say. I know I got very teary-eyed in my office. I got a little teary-eyed watching it again, but and Bonnie, you were such a lovely Tangi. So thank you. But hearing the story, reliving it, it just, I believe Lisa, you said it so beautifully. It was just very moving. And I was moved by my story as well as I was moved by everyone's stories. This journey, I've never, working with Maria and Dory, it was just a wonderful life process. So thank you, Sister Judith. And thank you, Michael. And thank you, wonderful writers. Without you guys, I don't know. I mean, because I'm very verbal, but I mean, the writers and the actors, you captured my essence. So thank you.
To echo, talk about echo. I can hear it in the room here. It's a wonderful collaboration. And again, to speak about collaborating in the room and being moved by it, it was a struggle to even get through the text because I would get so moved speaking the words because I felt it and remember hearing you even speak about it, Joy. So again, just like your story being so beautiful, hearing everybody else's story too, because I'm behind the scenes recording everything and finally I get to sit back and just enjoy the final product. I was very moved because oftentimes just doing everything, sending emails and all that stuff, I get so busy in the mix of everything. So to see the final product again, it was just beautiful. And thank you everyone for sharing your stories and all you artists just contributing to it all.
I would like to say that I always feel so honored by being allowed to hear people's stories and for the courage that it takes to open yourselves up to this process and to the generosity of giving the kind of time that I got with Lisa and that I've had with people in the past that I really then feel like are a part of my life after that. I feel the friendship with that person after going through all of and listening to these heartfelt stories and people's passions. And so I want to thank Lisa and also thank always all of the honorees for being that generous with us and your stories.
One of the themes that I felt, Dory, going through, sometimes we think of our heroes as people who do extraordinary things or extraordinary things, human trafficking, which of course Maria Lida works with, working with life parolees, housing transition for them, or working with domestic violence, and so many of those things that are so sort of visible. But what I felt the theme for today's heroes was that these were people who were in it for the long run, who are people for every day show up 100%. They are quieter stories in a sense, but they are tougher stories in the long run. The ability to stay with it for so long to do the work that needs to be done. And we don't always see the results of that in our lifetime, or even as we go through at the various stages of our lives. So again, I want to say to the heroes that are here today, to our hidden heroes, the truly hidden heroes, thank you for your service. And may our prayers and support go with you as you continue that work. And I think if there is anything else, Dory, that you want to add, or Joni?
I think Joni had a hand up.
Yeah, Joni?
Lisa, I can't tell you how much I loved your story, and I was I can't even put it into words really, but I think your whole arc of your life and your family and interfacing and the continuity and having this connection with nature when you were a child that sort of kept, it was sort of like pulling you in this very gentle way, but into this path of this really, really devotional work. And I go by the wetlands, like, every time I go to the airport, or if I go but seeing these pictures, and I'm really looking forward to visiting, often, but I just falling in love with Central Park. I mean, I really, I adored your story. I just adored it. It made me so inspired, and I really treasure nature, and I really worry about nature, and so I'm so grateful for the work you're doing, and feels very personal. My father comes from Buffalo. He moved a few places around the East Coast, but eventually came to California, although to Northern California, and felt, like this whole world of, so anyway, that's sort of a sidelight, but it just everything. And I don't know if this is pertinent to anything, but I told both Bonnie and Dory this. I was in a play by this playwright who I adore, whose name is Horton Foote, and one of the favorite roles I ever played was in this play called Lilydale, which was, I want to digress way off the subject here, but it was a very spiritual path. It was just a very deep play on this character. Anyway, so the minute I read this story and saw Lilydale, I was very, anyway, so there's all these personal but that's irrelevant to your story, which is really the issue here. And it was magnificent. And the devotion to getting people into nature, never been there. So just repeating what you said so beautifully in your story, but it's extremely inspiring and moving and important. And I feel very honored to have been able to try to present your story in all its fullness. And I thank you for the work you're doing, and everybody, the work you're all doing. I was writing myself little things while I was sitting here, because you make a point of saying that you're not directly religious, but this is a religion. And so all the stories, as I was hearing them, I just feel that purity of intention that people can have in their lives, whatever the basis is really the deal, right? This is really the deal about humanity and justice and life itself. And as you say, nature is dependent on humanity. So that unity of your story and everybody else's, it's been an inspiring afternoon. So thank you to all, and thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you to Bonnie. She wrote it. She wrote a beautiful story. I threw a lot at her.
Yes, I completely agree. I thought it was a wonderful story. So
Dory, do you have any sort of wrap-up words before we let them go eat their whatever we sent to the.
My wrap-up words, I hope the food is good. No, I was very surprised because these are 5 very quiet stories, and in a way, I know we say hidden heroes, but these I think were really lovely in the as you said, the day-to-day intention and dedication, and I thank all the storytellers and the storytellers, writers who were able to really convey those with so much humanity and a little bit of humor here and there, and it's just a wonderful project to work on. I love this project. You know, it's so easy to turn on television and see stories about bad people, and when do you ever get to see stories about people who do good? It's hard, you know. It's not the mainstream of our dramatic business. So this is it's just a real treat to be able to work on this project.
I would also like to say thank you to the team that has been behind the scenes today.
Yeah, Maria.
Michael McNaught, Sister Marianne Hepper, O'Connor Wilson, and Maria has been up front, but she has also been running the show as well. So she's been on our screen. So thank you.
Keith, our videographer.
Our videographer.
Absolutely.
Who's
So
acting in
thank
a
you,
play
and go
today.
have hopefully a lovely evening meal with your DoorDash, and and keep the good feelings of the day going.
Randy, look how in character I was.
Yeah. And I wore a print dress, Joy.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Maria, do you want to take a break, or thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.